In our last activity, we covered the culture of the Great Depression, focusing on the art and literature. Today, we're going to do another segment on the culture, focusing on radio, music, and the movies. Now, radio was free entertainment, and comedy shows became very popular. One of the first ones was the Jack Benny Show with comedian Jack Benny, which began in 1932. It would eventually move to television and would go on to 1955. Another one featured comedians George Burns and Gracie Allen, who in real life were actually married to each other. They portrayed a married couple in the Burns and Allen Show, which premiered on the radio in 1934. It too went on to television. I actually have a clip here from one of their television shows where they recreated one of their earlier radio shows. George Burns became a popular movie star later in life. In 1975, he was, at the age of 79, in The Sunshine Boys, where he won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And 2 years later, he was in the movie Oh God, where he portrayed God. George Burns died in 1996 at the age of 100. Next, we're going to look at music. In 1935, big band music became very popular. The big bands would consist of rhythm, brass, and woodwind instruments, about 12 to 25 musicians. Big bands introduced swing, which was a type of jazz music. Some of the famous big band leaders of the time were Tommy Dorsey, and one of my favorites, Glenn Miller. I've included a couple of his famous works here. Finally, Benny Goodman, the king of swing, and I've included one of his works also. Finally, we'll look at movies. Despite the economic problems, movie sales were at its highest. During the Depression, people wanted some escapism, at least for a couple hours. They could get away from their problems of the Depression. Now, in 1928, The Viking was released, not really a classic, but it was the first Technicolor film that featured a soundtrack. Walt Disney introduced Mickey Mouse in 1928 in his film clip Steamboat Willie. I've included a little short clip from the film. In 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs made their appearance in the movie theaters. Comedy was very big in the movies. The Marx Brothers here became very popular, especially cigar-chomping Groucho Marx. 1939 becomes the golden year of film. Many of the classic films we have in history were actually released that year. And they had themes like the common people triumphing over evil, as we see in Jimmy Stewart's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, escapism, The Wizard of Oz. But without a doubt, the biggest hit of the year was Gone with the Wind, starring Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh. In this photo, we see Hattie McDaniel, who played Mammy. Hattie McDaniel would go on to win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the first African-American to win an Oscar. Her acceptance speech at the Oscar award ceremony was very emotional. Well, that concludes our section on culture of the Great Depression, movies, radio, and film. Hope you enjoyed it.